Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In for October 14th, 2020. It is Wednesday, which is usually tech analysis, but you know what's going on right now? It's HashiConf Digital, and they just announced a new product, one of two new products they're going to announce this week, and this one is called Boundary. So I thought, today, why don't I talk a little bit about what Boundary is, because I got it right there, and what it's intended to do, what this release has in it. And then maybe next week I can do like a demo of using Boundary, but I just wanted to kind of talk about it at a high level for today. So that's the topic that I'm going to cover today. I don't have any housekeeping items, but before we get into the topic, I just want to check in with you. How you doing? It's Wednesday. We're all petering along this week. I got to tell you, today was a day. It was a day. I'm recording this late because it was such a busy day. There was a lot of stuff just going on, a lot of errands I had to run outside of work, and then work was pulling me a bunch of different directions. I barely got to watch the HashiConf keynote, so I'm a little bummed about that. But you know what? I'm going to get to do it later on tonight. So grab some popcorn and some wine and watch me some conference talks. It's exciting times around the Bellavance household. Anyway, so I hope you're doing well. Maybe you had an opportunity to actually watch some of the keynotes and the sessions. Don't ruin anything for me. I'm still waiting to find out what happened. But let's talk about Boundary. What is this thing? Why did they invent it? Well, I think Armin really set it up well in his keynote when he talked about an existing problem that they're setting out to solve. And the problem, as he described it, was if you are standing up infrastructure and then you want to provide your developers or a database person or an ops person access to that infrastructure, especially if it's remote, which, I mean, let's face it, almost all of us are remote. Typically, what you'd have to do is set them up on a VPN. So you'd have to give them VPN access. And then sometimes that VPN restricts what it can talk to, but a lot of the time it gets left wide open. So now you're connected in through the VPN and you might have direct access to the resource you want, or you might have to go through some sort of bastion host, which is another thing that someone has to set up and give you permissions on. And then you have to access the actual resource that you were intending to do. Let's say it's a database or a virtual machine. So you need credentials to do that. Maybe you're lucky and you've got Active Directory set up that'll give you permissions all the way through and it all just seamlessly works. But sometimes that's not the case. Also, in more dynamic environments where resources are being created and destroyed fairly often, you need a solution that's a little more dynamic than manually provisioning VPN credentials and provisioning access on the bastion host and provisioning credentials on the target environment. How are you going to do that? This is something that they kept encountering as they were going to different clients and talking to them. So they created a new project and it's called Boundary. And the category they're putting it under is secure access management. So the idea is it can secure access to different resources on your internal network by forcing all the traffic to go through Boundary. So it sets up a boundary. See, the name is perfect. They did a great job. And basically, the model is this. You have a control plane that defines what access people have. And that's what you would actually connect into as an administrator and configure. And as a user, you'd connect to the control plane to request access. The data plane or the management or the access plane, they're calling them worker nodes right now, I think. Those are one or more proxy nodes, essentially, that once you've been approved for a session, you then access that proxy node. And that's what proxies your traffic to whatever the destination resource is there. It's basically tunneling your traffic. Now, the solution is interesting because the authentication methods are handled by the control plane, and right now it's just username and password. That was their MVP product, but the plan is to add additional authentication methods to the control plane so you could have people authenticating through Azure AD or GitHub or your local Active Directory. So that would all be access. And once they're authenticated into the control system, they'll be presented with a catalog of things that they have access to connect to. And you can control what they have access to, what protocols they can use to connect to it. And once they select something within the catalog, then the idea is that Boundary is going to dynamically provision credentials for them to access that resource. Now, the early version of this is going to hand the credentials to the user to enter when they create their SSH connection or something like that. But future versions are going to do all of that seamlessly, so the end user never actually gets the credentials they're using to access the remote resources. All of that's managed through Boundary, and if you need to revoke it, you can just revoke it. They never get to see those credentials. Same thing as if you've got a database server that gets spun up and you want to provision access to that, and then also to the database that's running inside that server. Once as Boundary evolves, it'll be able to dynamically provision all of that. And how is it going to do that? It's probably going to hook into Vault to do that. Now, the other part of that I talked about a little bit was dynamic. This should be dynamic. How is it going to discover new systems and then determine access? Well, the way it's going to do that early on is you're going to have to go in and add systems manually or through the CLI or through the API. Everything's API driven, just like all the other products at HashiCorp, so you could hook this into an automation pipeline. But the longer term plan is to hook into systems like Consul that have service discovery. And Consul can discover new services, determine who should have access to them, and then hook into Boundary to provision that access and add it to the catalog that users log in and see, oh, now I have access to this new database server that was created or this new environment that was provisioned using Terraform. And yes, Terraform already has a fully featured provider for Boundary. So you can create and configure your Boundary instance with Terraform. And then as you spin up new environments, you could invoke the Boundary provider to provide access to those new environments. So it's already integrated into Terraform, and Consul integration and full Vault integration is coming later. So you can see how this product just kind of like ties all of the things together. Now, if you are interested in getting started with this, you can go to boundaryproject.io. That is the homepage, and they've already got a learn catalog of how to go about working with the 0.1 release. And yes, it's an 0.1 release. This is early days for the product. So that will walk you through a getting started guide. And then it also directs you to the GitHub because this is an open source project. So you can download from the project website, or you can go to GitHub, you can build it yourself, you can dig into some of the code, you could even contribute if that's the sort of thing you're interested in. I personally don't know how to develop in Go, and I've tried a few times and not gotten very far. So that's not going to be my personal avenue, but that is one potential avenue. There's a lot of improvements that are going to be added. They definitely have a long-term vision for this product. The very early version is relatively simple in nature. It's just one step up from a proof of concept, basically, but it will allow you to connect remotely to systems through the worker node. And the idea is basically from an architecture standpoint, you have a public subnet that has your control and worker nodes in it. And traffic will come in and hit those worker nodes. And then in your private subnets, you'll have whatever those resources are. And then you'll set up security groups or network security group rules or NSX rules, whatever environment you're working with, to basically say only accept this type of traffic from those worker nodes. Do not accept it from, the public. And now when you want to SSH into something that's in the internal network, you'll have to go through that worker node, and it will only accept the worker node. You could probably lock it down as well, but the internal nodes will only accept traffic from that worker node. So there's still a little bit of provisioning that you need to do on your side to lock things down from a networking standpoint. But guess what? You can do all of that with Terraform. And they just announced this new thing. It's console integrations with Terraform to configure networking devices. So now you have this other option where you can configure your network devices with Terraform and console, and then hook that into Boundary. And wow, I've made a whole spaghetti mess of my brain. So it's a little bit crazy. So like I said, the requirements are pretty low. The whole thing's self-contained. If you want to run it in dev mode, you can run it locally. And then if you want to provision this out to more of a production environment, the two things you need is a database of some kind. Right now, they're using Postgres for the database, but there's no reason they can't support other databases in the future. There's nothing special that they're doing with Postgres that you couldn't do with another SQL-style database. And the other thing you need is a KMS, a key management system of some kind. So any of the like Azure Key Vault or AWS KMS or any of those Key Vault systems, KMS systems should snap in no problem. And I'm definitely going to put together a demo probably on a Terraform Tuesday that involves all of this stuff. But that's all I have for today. It was a lot of new interesting things came out of HashiConf, and tomorrow they're announcing another new product. So, stay tuned for that. It should be pretty interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. Stay healthy and stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.